Get ready with me while I tell you about the time I dropped right out of my sorority. I've actually been wanting to tell this story for like the past 2 years during Rush Talk, but it contains a little bit of sensitive information about my family, and I didn't want to embarrass my family. But I got this letter in the mail yesterday from my university, and it kind of struck a nerve with me and brought up a lot of past memories, and I said, you know what, it's time for me to share my story. When I went to college, I was the first in my family to do so. I had to navigate financial aid, sorority life, on-campus living, how to find housing, all of that stuff by myself. I really was kind of a go-getter, and my family was going through a lot financially. They really were. Okay, so I got a grant to go to school, and that's how I made it. That's how I survived. I had no idea anything about sororities, but I got into one, and I loved it. I have longed for sisterhood, for friendship, for that kind of community my entire life. I have always felt left out, and I just thought, this is it. This is my moment, and I was so excited to be there. So something happened. I had a great grandmother who was wonderful and amazing, and she had every year for Christmas and my birthday never given me a gift except savings bonds. And I cashed those in, I put them in my bank account. Well, then I got my first statement from the university that was like, you have to pay, your first tuition. And I didn't understand how financial aid worked. I didn't know that they were going to eventually pay it for me, that I just had to wait for it to post to my account. I had no idea. So that savings bond money that my great grandmother had given me, I used to pay my tuition, and I received my grant. That's how I took care of myself my first semester. In the meantime, back home, things were pretty rough for my family. They were in the process of losing their house. It was in the middle of the recession, or at the end of the recession, and in from 28 to 2010, they were losing their house. Little did I know they were not making my car payments. My car almost got repossessed. I had to hide it at my best friend's house, actually at her boyfriend's house. I'm literally shaking telling this story because I'm so upset. So I had to hide my car at her boyfriend's house, and second semester rolls around. Now, I had used my grant money in the first semester to pay my sorority dues. I almost said the name of it, my sorority dues. And the second semester rolls around. I don't have that money anymore because remember, I had accidentally used my grandmother's savings bond to pay my tuition. I got a grant. Well, now the grant that I got the second semester has actually paid my tuition like it was supposed to. So I have no money. And I've gotten really behind on my dues. I remember riding around town, going into little boutiques and submitting applications. And I had just recently put in an application at a restaurant where I did eventually get a job when I got called into a standards meeting. I didn't get called to a standards meeting for being bad, for being out at the bars, partying, and doing all kinds of, I wasn't being an embarrassment to the sorority, is what I'm trying to say. My grades were good, I was good, but I was behind on my dues. I get called into the standards meeting, which was embarrassing. I'm there with a bunch of my peers, people who are a little bit older than me or who are my age, who are officers, and they're all staring at me. And then there was an older lady there who was a big to-do within the university and also within my sorority. I guess she was like the advisor or something. I really don't know. So it was embarrassing. I remember crying. I remember telling them about my family situation. People sitting in the room who were my peers, they were my friends. And I remember them looking at me with pity and empathy, but they didn't speak up. The people who did speak up were horrid. They were mean. And the older lady, the advisor, she said to me, can you prove that you've put in applications to jobs? I have never felt so little. It's almost like they thought that I was lying about my family losing their home and being unable to pay my car payment. Flash forward to my sophomore year, I had found a job. I was working at that job and I was making pretty good money. I was paying my dues. I was able to live. I had gotten a house off campus. Homecoming week rolls around, and it's a big deal for sororities. Homecoming week, right? And it was mandatory for us to be in the homecoming parade and to be at the homecoming game. Well, I said, I can't. I'm working at a restaurant in a college town on homecoming weekend. It's the busiest weekend of the year. And you wanna know what they said to me? You'll have to pay a fine. I said, do what? They said, you'll have to pay a fine. There will be a fine on your account if you're not going to be at the homecoming events to represent us. I said, this is the job that you asked me to prove I had applied for. And they said, well, you can come clean the house and work off your fine. You can come do things around the house and work up your fine. You don't have to pay it. I was absolutely bewildered. It was the same president who had asked me, or who was in the room when I was asked, where I had applied for jobs, who was sitting in front of me telling me I was gonna have to pay a fine. And I was like, but you remember when I was crying in the spring and I told you all about my family situation, and and y'all asked me if I had found a job. I found a job, and I have to work at that job. If I don't, I'm going to get fired. And I actually ended up babysitting for a former sister a couple of years later. And she loved me and I loved her, and I told her everything that I just told you, and she said, we have emergency funds for sisters who are in those situations. They should have never talked to you that way. They should have never treated you like that. There was assistance for you. There was help for you. Well, that's just so funny to me, because I did not receive assistance or help. I was not treated like a sister, and it's probably one of those reasons that I have trust issues to this day with people. But let me tell you something. In the mail yesterday, I got a letter saying that lady had retired from that university and pretty much was asking alumni to donate toward her scholarship fund. They also sent in a little note for us to write our memories of her on. And boy, oh boy, the little note just isn't big enough for me to write what I want to say about that lady. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not big enough for me to write what I want to say about her and how she made me feel about as big as this little tiny tart makeup puff. That's how big she made me feel. And I will not be donating her little scholarship fund in her name. In all seriousness, there were some really good girls in there that I still love, and when they see this, they're one reason that I haven't made this video. They're one reason that I haven't spoken out, because I do love them, and they love that sorority, and that's great for them. I'm thankful that not everybody had the same experience that I did, because how demeaning for that amount of people to have, you know? But anyway, it certainly wasn't for me. Had to get out of there.